Hi, my name is Adam Carruthers. As always, welcome to Adam Talks. And we're doing something a bit special, focusing, of course, for UEFA Euro 2020. Yes, it is still called 2020, even though it's taking place in 2021. But it's not going to be me sitting here highlighting players and groups and all of that, because that would be very dull. I'd like to introduce from the Athletic, Jack Pitt-Brooke, who we've become accustomed to on his writings about Tottenham Hotspur, breaking my heart as a Spurs supporter because of how the season went, and also Nancy Frostick, who's we've come accustomed to for writing about Sheffield Wednesday. So far cry from the Owls. So we're focusing today on Group D. No, I don't think it's the group of death, but certainly lots of permutations in this. Now, before I converse about the teams, just a quick overview. England, of course, are in the group. They finished as winners of Group A, making their 10th appearance at the finals. The best in it finish was third back in 1968 and the semi-finals in 1996. Croatia, they won Group E. They're making their 6th appearance at the finals, their best ever finish. The quarterfinals in 1996 and 2008. Scotland, they got to the finals via the playoffs, a nervy penalty shootout. First major tournament, full stop, since 1998. Their last Euros was in 1996. They've not exited the group stage yet in any of their campaigns. The Czech Republic, rounding up the group, were runners-up in Group A, like England, making their 10th appearance in the finals. They were winners in 1976 when they were known as Czechoslovakia, in all matches to be played at either Wembley in London, of course, or Hampden Park in Glasgow. So let's get straight to one of the most well-supported teams globally. Lots of familiar names. England. Jack, first and foremost, the talent pool available at Gareth Southgate's fingertips. Is it better than what we saw in 2018 or not?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely better. I think that in 2018, England had quite a young, promising squad. But since then, Sterling's got better. Kane, I think, is better than ever. But on top of that, we've got a new generation of players who didn't go to the 2018 World Cup, who are just fantastically good. I mean, Phil Foden is the most talented young English player of his generation, I think. But then Mason Mount is going to have a really big impact at this Euros. He's done tremendously well with Chelsea. Reece James, Mason Greenwood is another great talent. So I think it's a much more exciting England squad than the one that we took to Russia 3 years ago.
Nancy, I guess that becomes, you would say, a good headache for Gareth Southgate, because it's who do you pick? James Maddison's not involved. I know he's had an injury-ravaged season, but not everybody's going to be happy with who's selected to go and who's not.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a few people who obviously, with the tournament being knocked on a year, now have missed out and can probably feel a bit hard done by. Like Danny Ings springs to mind after the fantastic season he had last year. And obviously this year, he's still been great, but his season's kind of tailed off. So you can kind of see why he's been overlooked. But equally, then you get people like Jude Bellingham, who obviously wouldn't have been probably close last summer, although he'd done really well at Birmingham. Now, I think for me, he'd be one of my first names on the team sheet, definitely for that opening game, which for a player of his age is just remarkable, really. Such a talented prospect. And equally then as well, Phil Foden kind of, he might have been around the fringes last summer, but again, now you think he's probably one of your first names on the team sheet. So yeah, not everyone will be happy. And obviously, there was the 33-man squad that Gareth Southgate had to trim. So, it's he's clearly had trouble with European tournaments, Champions League, Europa League, kind of running long in the season as well. So selection, not an easy thing at all.
No, certainly not. Throughout the whole Premier League season, at least, it's been a question of this player is better than that player. Just for example, Grealish is better than Maddison. Foden's in the picture, Mason Mount. But in the terms of being a good headache to have, the other area would be defensively. In particular, Jack, that right-back position. I found it very interesting that Gareth Southgate decided to say, look, you see 4 right-backs. I see 4 good footballers who can play. Some can play left-back, right-back, a wing-back, and, of course, the aforementioned right-back position as well. But that speaks about the pragmatism, perhaps, which we've seen under Gareth Southgate. How do you think England are going to be setting up?
Well, that's a really good question. I think there's broadly two options: either the 3-4-3, which is generally what England played last season, or maybe the 4-2-3-1, which they went back to in those last two games in March. I think a lot of it depends on which individuals are available. So, for example, Harry Maguire would normally be England's first choice centre-back, and I think Maguire would be capable of playing in a two alongside John Stones. That said, Maguire's currently injured. If he's not fully fit to play in that first game against Croatia, I don't think Southgate would want Stones and one other. I think he'd probably want to go to a back three, which of course would mean that Kyle Walker would move from right back onto the right-hand side of that back three, which is the role that he played in the 2018 World Cup for England. And that's when they could have another specialist, more attacking right wing back, whether that's Trippier, who played there in 2018, Alexander-Arnold, who obviously Liverpool fans really want to play, or Reece James, who's done really well for Chelsea this year. So it's plausible that Southgate could use more than one of his four right backs, and we don't know which of those four might not make the final list. Like, it's totally plausible that I think either Alexander-Arnold or James will be cut from the squad when it goes down to the 26th next week. So there's really quite a few options for Southgate in those positions, but it does depend on what sort of formation he wants to play. And I think he'll be very conscious of the fact that while the 4-2-3-1 allows you an extra attacking player on the pitch, and it might be better for unpicking teams and scoring goals and creating chances, it does leave England a bit exposed. And if he goes to 3-4-3, he'll obviously lose an attacking player, and England, I think, will create fewer chances and probably be a bit less fun to watch. So it's a balancing act, and we won't really know what the right answer is until we get into the first game.
Nancy, what do you think about that? Fun to watch. Do you like your teams to be a bit more fluid in terms of setting up in a scoreline, looking for a goal, and who the opponents are? Or do you want your teams to have a set way of playing?
Yeah, this is a good question, because for me, I think I would choose entertaining football, which possibly isn't the popular answer given how desperate everyone in England is for England to win a tournament. But I mean, when I think about the World Cup in 2018, it felt like the games were entertaining as well as, you know, the team progressing far in the tournament. And I think that helps so much with kind of the groundswell of support, where with it being games played at Wembley and at Hampden Park, you know, on home soil, everyone's going to be up for it anyway. But if you throw in entertaining football to the mix, kind of expansive play, and which a lot of these players will be really suited to, you know, that Gareth Southgate selected, I think it just helps even more. You know, we've all sat through enough fairly turgid England games over the years, and frustrating tournaments where you're just thinking, oh God, you know, where are they going to find a goal from, or, you know, why are things breaking down or not quite paying off? And so, you know, having something that's a bit more open end to end, I think is always beneficial.
Yeah, turgid, frustrating, I think really are the correct words to use. One liability perhaps will be the goalkeeping situation though, Jack. With Nick Pope out of commission, he's gone for surgery. The substitute goalkeepers, this is based on the presumption that Pickford starts, have about one cap between them. So that could be a problem. Do you feel that Pickford could be a liability in this tournament?
Well, maybe. I mean, Pickford clearly, for the last few seasons for Everton, has made quite a few mistakes. His decision-making can be erratic. He never really looks that secure sometimes. And sometimes he can look a little bit panicky in a way that I think, you know, leads to him making slightly embarrassing errors. That all said, Southgate really likes him. You know, he's a very important part of the England team. I don't think his position as number one has been under any threat. One, because he was an important part of the 2018 team, which I think counts for a lot. Also, because he is England's best keeper by miles with his feet. Like, Pickford's kicking is just much, much better than Pope's. And that, given that England like to play out from the back, like, Pope can't really do that because that's not how Burnley play. Whereas Pickford is very, very good at that, either, you know, passing the ball amongst the defenders around him or going kind of long and direct and precise towards a Harry Kane or someone to hold the ball up. So in that sense, I think Pickford would have been the first choice even without Pope. But the annoying thing about Pope getting injured is that over the last few years, Southgate has been really keen to give Pope quite a few games just so he wouldn't be coming into the tournament with zero experience. So Pope has probably got, I don't know, a dozen or so caps in the last few years from playing the games when either Pickford's injured or Southgate wants to give him a rest. Now, the problem, as you said, is that now that Pope is injured and won't be going to the Euros, that means that if anything happens to Pickford, and it could because, you know, players get injured or sent off or whatever, then England would be bringing in, I imagine, Henderson, who's got no international experience really. And if it's not Henderson, it'd be Sam Johnson, who's got even less. So in that sense, England are now in a situation where if something does happen to the first choice, they'd be relying on a guy who hasn't got any international experience at all.
Confidence. Do you have confidence, Nancy, looking at the goalkeeping situation in England? Because we're going on about the attacking talents, the defensive talents at the disposal of Gareth Southgate. Just one area seems to be the keeper situation, which is nothing new as well, I should add, for the national setup.
Yeah, it feels strange, I suppose, when you look back over the years at kind of all the various keepers that have been in and out for England, that I can't really think when the last...
David Seaman.
Yeah, Seaman would probably be the last one we'd really have had absolute confidence in, maybe. But or Joe Hart when he was on that, you know, at the top of his game for Man City, maybe. But yeah, it's not a position that kind of fills me with confidence at this moment in time. But then again, you know, Pickford was the hero in 2018, and you know, and so there's nothing to say that, you know, he won't absolutely thrive again in this environment. And, you know, tournament football is very different to league football, and, you know, that could all kind of play into it. But yeah, he's clearly the strongest one of the four. He's got the most experience. And like Jack says, I can't really see why Southgate would look elsewhere, because he does really like him. And so that in itself is a real good vote of confidence for Pickford. But yeah, it probably is the weakest position that England have, I'd say, and what an important one as well, if we come up in you know, penalty shootouts and all sorts.
Yeah, very true. Jack, just a quick mention for Graeme Jones being involved in the coaching setup. He has history with Gareth Southgate. They did the pro license together. He was asked by Southgate to be his assistant for the under-21s, although Graeme Jones had to turn the offer down. I believe he was a bit busy with Everton at the time. And the experience that he brings, having worked with Belgium before this as well. And I know a lot of Newcastle fans appreciate the work that he's done for the Toon Army this season.
Yeah, so Graeme Jones is a really, really highly rated and respected coach. He's worked mainly with Roberto Martinez over the years, I think, at both Wigan Athletic and Everton. People just say he's a very, very good technical coach. He's very good at putting on sessions. Southgate clearly wanted something a little bit extra in his coaching team this year with the departure of Alan Russell. And Jones, having worked with Newcastle this year, who, to be honest, have actually improved a lot as the season's gone on, having been pretty poor at the start and then finished very comfortably. I think Southgate's hopeful that Jones will add a bit of extra kind of coaching now to that group alongside, you know, Chris Powell, Steve Holland, Martin Margetson, the more established members of the coaching staff. So in that sense, I think it's a really interesting appointment for England, and hopefully will set them on the road to playing some better football over the course of the tournament.
Yeah, well, we spent plenty of time talking about England. I want to move on a bit. Croatia, how different are they, Nancy, from the side that we saw in the 2018 World Cup, the one that reached the final? They weren't the youngest team on that occasion. They're certainly not the youngest team on this occasion either.
No, it's strange, isn't it? Because you keep looking at people like Luka Modric and you think, oh, maybe he's going to slow down at some point, and yet, you know, he's still absolutely like one of the best midfielders around. But I think obviously there's a few names missing this time around. Even Rakitic, I think, is retired from international duty, and Mario Mandzukic as well. So there's a few maybe of the bigger names that obviously we'd know across Europe for being, you know, really great players for Croatia. But I think they've had a few sort of teething problems in the last year trying to get new blood in. I think there's been a lot of rotation, and that's not always paid off in Nations League games. And but they do have some really bright players coming through. I think Nikola Vlasic is worth a mention. Obviously, he didn't have such a great spell at Everton, but seems to be absolutely thriving at CSKA in Moscow. So yeah, I think, look, they're still going to be a challenge. I don't think you'd write them off to really push England to top that group and go further, even with the squad being as old as they are, sort of comparatively to maybe England and others. But yeah, still a challenge and still a player, I think. Yeah.
With Croatia, comparing when they faced England, Jack, it feels very much like England have been ascending with all the talent that's come through. Names we already mentioned, whereas Croatia perhaps not having quite the same impact. How strong do you think they are heading into this tournament?
Well, I think they're still good. You know, any team with Modric in the middle is still going to be very strong in midfield, very able to keep and use the ball well. And as Nancy said, they have retained quite a few of their other older players. You know, there's even Perisic is still there. The centre backs, Dejan Lovren and Domagoj Vida are still there. To be honest, I thought they were a little bit. Those guys looked a bit old and slow and susceptible to pace back in 2018 at the World Cup, and it's going to be interesting to see if they've got even slower since then, or if England will be able to exploit that perhaps when they meet at Wembley in a few weeks' time. But clearly they've got a lot of good players. They've got a history of just continuing to produce good players. Like I don't think that any of the new guys coming into the team won't be up to it. As Nancy said, they do have talent coming through, so it won't be an easy game for England, even though there is obviously a sense that, you know, Croatian football in this generation had been building all the way up to getting that semi-final spot in 2018 where they did amazingly. And since then, it'd be totally understandable if some of that team have lost a little bit of motivation. You know, remember when England were in the same Nations League group as Croatia immediately after that World Cup, and England drew 0-0 away in Rijeka. And then when they came back to Wembley, England overturned Croatia in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes to win 2-1. It did feel at that point like maybe Croatia's motivation had dropped a little bit since the World Cup. And England were able to beat them. But, you know, that was 3 years ago, and things have moved on quite a lot since then. And maybe this Croatia team will come back again strong this summer.
Yeah, and let's not forget Luka Modric, like you said, still going strong. In fact, he just signed a new contract at Real Madrid, and he's about my age, so I think that's saying a lot.
And also, sorry, if I can add one other thing on Modric, it's that as old as he is, the fact is that international football is just much slower than club football, which means that I don't think that, you know, so obviously Modric had a pretty tough time up against Chelsea in the Champions League semi-finals a few weeks ago, because just the pace and intensity that Chelsea were able to play at was too much for him. But international tournaments, it's a very different style of play. It's much slower. And I think there's no reason that Modric, even at 36, won't be able to shine just as much at this Euros as he did at the World Cup 3 years ago, even if he's maybe not quite the same player for Real Madrid as he was before.
Yeah. There's a rivalry between England and Croatia, but it cannot be beaten by the rivalry between England and Scotland. Nancy, for the casual observer, the casual viewer out there, I think the two-star players would be Tierney and Robertson. And when we watch them at club level, they're playing in the same position. So how do these two fit in, Tierney and Robertson?
Yeah, it's a good question because, you know, I think looking at their numbers this season, their stats, you know, they've been sort of toe-to-toe almost. And so I suppose it is a big decision for Steve Clarke whether he goes for one or the other or tries to go for both. I think Tierney's probably more versatile in that respect, where he could play on the left-sided centre-back, say, with Robertson alongside him. But, you know, we've seen maybe that could be beneficial as well. We've seen how like overlapping centre-backs worked for Sheffield United in the Premier League, so you never know if that sort of thing would come into play for Scotland. But yeah, it's going to be interesting depending on what formation he goes for, what setup he goes for, and that has to work, I suppose, not just for those two players, but then the whole system and the whole team. You know, it's all right trying to fit two of your best players in, but if it's going to compromise the bigger idea, and you know, gosh, this is a problem we've had with England before, the whole Gerrard versus Lampard debate, you know, it is a challenge, and so I wonder if, you know, that could evolve, but yeah, it is a good dilemma for them.
Yeah, Robertson has to be the key here because he's captain, Jack. Do you think he gets not above Tierney, who we should also add has had a lot of injury problems for a few years now?
Yeah, well, I think as Nancy says, it would be great to try and get both of them in if you possibly could, just because they are probably Scotland's two best players. I think, you know, Robertson is an amazing player. I know, like a lot of Liverpool players, had a pretty tough season. I think a lot of those guys are mentally and physically exhausted just after, the amazing last few years they've had, getting to a Champions League final, losing, getting to a Champions League final, winning the next year, running Man City close in the Premier League but not quite getting it. Then obviously we're finally winning the Premier League title in 2019-20. And I think that fatigue has really shown this season, which I think is probably natural. But clearly Robertson is still a great player. He's been really, really, really important to how Liverpool have done over the last few seasons, and I'm sure he will be desperate to have a great Euros. Like, I think this is Scotland's first major international tournament since France '98, I think.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So there's a whole generation of players who've got no real experience of this sort of thing, and they will obviously, like all countries, I suppose, who haven't been in a tournament for a while, they will be massively motivated to make an impact. So I'm really looking forward to watching them play. I think their games will be, I think they'll play a kind of hard to beat style. I think that's what Steve Clarke has drilled into them over the last few years. But I think, if England think there'll be a rollover, they're absolutely wrong, because that's going to be a really tough game.
Yeah. What about on a human level, Nancy? I'm sure you got Scottish friends. I mean, hereditary wise, I'm Scottish. My surname is Carruthers. I was watching some Instagram video clips of Martin Compston from Line of Duty. He asked him to stop filming just so he could watch the penalty shootout, and someone filmed his reaction. And you could tell how much it meant to him. How much do you think it means to fans of Scotland, those with Scottish ancestry, to see them at a major tournament for the first time, like Jack said, since 1998?
Yeah, it's got to be a huge deal. I mean, I don't know if this is going to, upset you both now, but I don't remember Scotland being at a national tournament. I would have been 3 in 98. So, I'm looking forward to this from a just seeing the rivalry point of view. I mean, I know we had that friendly a few years back, and Ricky Lambert scored that header to win it at the end, and that was incredible. But I mean, take it into a tournament setting, and that goes up a notch. So yeah, it's going to be a huge occasion. And obviously you saw the way that the Scotland squad celebrated at the end when they'd won that playoff. All the songs, and what was it, Yes Sir I Can Boogie, and in the changing room, and it means a massive amount to them. And it's a great achievement to have 3 home nations there, so it'd be good fun.
Yeah, please, I urge you, just go onto YouTube, Scotland, Euro 96, just watch some of their highlights, particularly the game against England. Do that as a special favor for me. Rounding up the group, we have the Czech Republic, and all eyes, I think, Jack, would be on Thomas Soucek, because he's had a magnificent campaign of West Ham, and he's been working side by side with his international teammate at West Ham in the form of COUFAL.
Yeah, Soucek and COUFAL have been 2 of the best signings in the Premier League I can remember in the last few seasons. To be honest, people didn't know that much about them in the UK before they came, and yet Soucek is amazing. He's like he does basically more or less what Marouane and Fellaini used to do for David Moyes' Everton. Like, he's a big guy, you get him in the box, get the ball in his head. He's got an amazing nose for goal. Like, he just knows where the ball's going to bounce, and he'll stick one of his long legs out and put it in the net. Like, he's really, really good fun, and you can tell the fans have really taken to him over the course of the season. Whereas COUFAL is just a sort of very solid, very hard-working, very dependable right back who's given West Ham something that they've really needed, I think, for a while in that position. So 2 really, really important and impressive signings. And to be honest, the Czech Republic team is actually a really good team. Like, probably the last time England were properly outplayed was when we lost in Prague in the autumn of 2019. I think England lost I remember going to the game, I think we lost 2-1. And Czech Republic were just all over us. And it wasn't even just like one individual like a Soucek playing well. It was the whole Czech Republic team, I remember were really organised, worked really hard. England didn't really get a sniff. And so I did think, if Czech Republic played like that at Wembley, then England could get a bit of a nasty surprise.
Yeah. And what about further up front, Nancy? Because Patrick Schick, he's had a great season with Bayer Leverkusen, 13 goals in all competitions, so he could be one to watch out for. And also Vidra, who, for those who have watched the Premier League, will be very familiar with. He's only scored 6 goals in all competitions this season, but boy, does he work hard. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think, the other teams in this group would be stupid to underestimate. kind of the attacking threat of the Czech Republic, because I think Thomas SOUCEK has contributed quite a few goals in the qualifying campaign as well. So, you know, they've got goals in midfield as well. But yeah, you know, Vidra's one of those players where it feels like he's been around in English football for ages. And I think he's sort of gone through fits and starts with Burnley, scoring, you know, a few on the bounce, and then obviously sort of not pushing beyond those 6 goals. But yeah, both, you know, real threats. And yeah, I can see them being more of a problem, like Jack said, than maybe people are thinking about at this stage, because there's so much focus on those other rivalries with Scotland and Croatia.
All right, tell you what, we're almost at the end of today's recording. I need to get some quick fire predictions. We've talked about this group. So Group D, who is going to be progressing? Jack first, please.
England and the Czech Republic.
England and the Czech Republic. Nancy, I see your reaction there.
Yeah, I'm going to go for England and Scotland. I just fancy them to, yeah, get all that home support and, yeah, be stubborn, difficult to beat.
Firmly behind the home nations. Who's going to be the overall champion, Jack, of the tournament?
France.
Very strong squad. I'll be talking about them in another episode. Nancy?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same. France for me.
Current reigning world champions, losing finalists on home soil in the last tournament as well. Who are your dark horses, Jack?
Italy.
Italy.
Are they too good? Can you be a dark horse if you won the World Cup in 2006? I don't know. Are they too established to be a dark horse? Because I do think they'll be good, and not many people have got them as likely winners at the moment.
They do tend to grow into tournaments, as we've seen on previous occasions as well. Nancy, Jack's gone for Italy. It's an interesting call. What about you?
I thought about Italy. I've gone for, and I don't know if you can call them dark horses after so many years of being called dark horses, but Belgium. It just feels like, you know, this is probably the time for them, although it has been for the past couple of tournaments with this group of players. Yeah.
I truly feel the same way as you. It's just that we've been saying they've been dark horses for a while, and there's Premier League winners there. There's Champions League finalists and some outstanding players. I guess it's just given their history in major tournaments, you would classify them as that. Who's going to be winning the Golden Boot? Who's going to be top scorer, Jack?
Harry Kane.
Harry Kane. Nancy?
I've also Harry Kane. Yeah.
Golden Glove. Who's going to be the standout keeper? Jack.
I'm going to say Hugo Lloris, just because I think France will keep so many clean sheets because they'll just dominate every game.
Understood. Nancy?
I've gone for Thibaut Courtois. I think if Belgium stay in it long enough, he'll be the one. Yeah.
Player of the tournament, who's going to be the standout player? Jack, can you go with a France player again, or would it be someone a little bit more?
Well, I don't think France are going to be that... The way that France play isn't really that individualized. Like it's very much all about the team ethics. So there's not really that much room for individual expression. I would say I'm going to go for Bernardo Silva. I think Portugal will be really, really good. And Bernardo Silva has been good at points for City this year. Hasn't always been in the team. So maybe he'll have a bit more energy to really run the game for Portugal.
Yeah. When it comes to Portugal, that you could also classify them as dark horses, even though they're the reigning champions. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, but Nancy, your player of the tournament?
Also going to stick with Portugal. I'm going to go for Andre Silva. If he gets the minutes, he's had such a good season with Frankfurt that I think if he can carry that form on, be a good player to look out for.
We've talked a lot of positives, but we have to go for a slight negative here. The disappointment of the tournament. Who's going into this with expectations, Jack? This could be a team. It could be a player. It could be a manager, whatever.
I'm going for Germany. I think Joachim Löw's been in that job for too long. I don't think they'll get out of their group because I think France and Portugal are both much better than them. Germany are kind of caught between two generations at the moment, and I think they're going to struggle.
Shades of the World Cup in 2018. Nancy?
Spain for me. I'm just not sure they've kind of addressed other problems that have led to them being knocked out in the last few years. And so, yeah, I think they might struggle.
It's not because secretly you're a Real Madrid fan and there's no representation from Real Madrid, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you throw Sergio Ramos in, it solves a lot of problems. No.
All right, perfect. I want to thank you both for taking the time to sit down and talk to me, and of course, all our viewers here in Malaysia. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Jack and Nancy, stay safe, enjoy the tournament, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you again very, very soon.
Thank you very much for having us.
Cheers.